everyone, and welcome back to the Shana Show. So this is the monthly Thursdays video for December 2024, the last monthly Thursdays video for 2024. And because it's the last one for 2024, I figured why not do like a video of reminders for readers, whether you've been reading for years or you're just getting into reading, or you had stopped reading and you're just getting back into it. I figured why not do a little reminders video for you all, because I feel like we could all use the occasional reminder when it comes to reading, especially when you're just getting into reading or getting back into reading. Hopefully this video helps, and hopefully this video also helps people who have been reading for quite some time and never really stopped reading. So these are 10 reminders for readers for 2025, and I have included a couple of links down below in the description. I've included a Reddit thread that has some reminders and has a discussion as well. And I've also included 2 links to videos that I've done. One is what it takes to be a reader, and the other one is what to do during a reading slump, funk, rut. With all that said, let's get into this video. First and foremost is that it is okay to not meet your yearly reading goal, whether it's on Goodreads, Storygraph, another app, whether it's just a reading goal you have for yourself. It is okay to not meet that. It is normal to not meet that, mainly because we all have lives outside of reading, especially if you're not a book-related influencer like on YouTube or on Instagram or on TikTok. If you're not an influencer who is discussing books or a bookish content influencer, your life does not revolve around books. We all like to think it does. We all like to say it does, that our lives revolve around books and reading, and that we can dedicate all this time to reading, when in actuality that isn't as, what's the word, realistic. And we can try to make it realistic, but at the end of the day, based on how different everyone's lives are, based on how different the schedules are and time frames and what we can get to in the course of a day, it's okay if you don't meet your yearly reading goal. The next one is that for the next reminder is that your reading goal, when it's like the number of books you read per year, that specific reading goal, it does not need to be a big number. It does not need to be 50 plus books. It does not need to be 100 plus books. It does not have to be 200 plus books. It does not have to be a large number. It can be 1 book. It can be 2 books. It can be 10. It can be 20. It does not have to be a large number. And it can be catered to your personal lifestyle and schedule and what types of books you read. It does not have to be a large number. I know a lot of people do large numbers. I keep mine at about 100 to 115 per year, but it does not have to be over 50 books per year. It does not have to be over 100 books per year. It's not necessary. I know a lot of people like doing that to kind of challenge themselves to read more, and if that does help you to read more, that is great. Go for it and continue doing that. But it does not need to be that, especially if you're intimidated by reading that amount of books, reading a large number of books. The next one is to read because you enjoy it and because you're interested in the books that you're choosing. And I feel like a lot of people start to read books, pick up books, because they see that they're hyped on Instagram, they see that they're hyped on Book Talk especially, they see that they're being hyped on YouTube, or just in general. And you don't have to pick up a book you're not interested in just because it's hyped, because a lot of the times that can deter you from reading if you pick up a hyped book and you don't like it, yet you see that everyone else is enjoying it. It does not have to be that way. If you're interested in a hype book, or if you're interested in reading a hyped book, or if the topic actually genuinely interests you, or if that's a challenge that you have for yourself to try to read hyped books, that is perfectly fine, but that is not a requirement, because at the end of the day, you should be reading books that you are enjoying and that you are interested in. And the same goes with genres too. You do not have to read hyped up genres just because they're hyped. You should be reading the genres that you are interested in and that you enjoy. The next reminder is, don't feel like you need to cheat the system by reading short books you don't actually want to read. Now, short books are a great way to deal with a reading slump, a reading funk, a reading rut. Those are a great way to deal with that. However, you do not need to be reading those just to try to read more books, just to, as this reminder says, cheat the system. You don't need to be reading short books to do that. You should, because a lot of the times, at least for me, when I'm reading a short book, I feel like I'm wanting more going into it. Like, I read A Christmas Carol, and I really enjoyed the book. However, each time I've read it, I think I've read it 2 to 3 times at this point. Each time I've read it, I'm like, I want a little bit more. Mainly because I love the movie so much. The George Scott Christmas Carol, the Muppet Christmas Carol, and the Mickey Mouse one. I love those ones so much. So it's like, I always want a little bit more from the book. And that is a short book. It's not long. It's like, I think 100 pages or less, depending on the copy you get. If you're just getting A Christmas Carol. But you don't need to read short books just to increase the number of books you're reading. That kind of ties into not meeting your yearly reading goal or not needing it to be a big number. The next reminder is, you don't have to read fast, you don't have to read a lot, you don't have to read a certain amount of books per month, a certain number of books per month to be considered a reader. Because a lot of the times we see a lot of bookish content creators, whether on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, we see a lot of people reading a lot of books per month. And I know that I have sometimes succumbed to this, where it's like, oh, I feel like I need to be reading more, so I'll start a bunch of books and then get myself into a reading slump. You don't have to be reading a certain amount per month. You don't have to be reading fast. You don't have to be reading a lot. You need to be reading at your own pace so that you can actually enjoy the books that you're reading and enjoy the act of reading. The next one, I feel like this one is a little bit of a... The next reminder, I feel might be a little bit confusing, but at the same time, you don't need a bookshelf. You can borrow from your library. There are apps where you can borrow books, Libby and Hoopla, for example. And there's Audible, there's Kindle Unlimited. There are so many resources out there for you to access books. And I know that in certain countries, in certain areas, it is harder to access books online and to access books in general. But you do not need to have a bookshelf to be considered a reader, to be a reader. Because, like I just said, there are so many other resources out there for digital books without pirating the books. So you don't need a physical bookshelf to be a reader, to read. Like I said, there's Kindle Unlimited, there's Kindle, there's Audible, there's Libby, which has both ebooks and audiobooks, there's Hoopla, which has both ebooks and audiobooks. There's so many different digital book resources, ebook or audiobook, for you to access, for people to access, so that they can read without necessarily having physical books. And you can also just go support your physical libraries. You don't need a physical bookshelf, is the point. The next reminder is, you don't need to be doing unhauls or hauls of books. You don't need to be doing bookstore runs. Like, there is a very capitalistic consumerism approach to the bookish community, where it's like, we constantly need to be buying books. I do this a lot. I know I do this a lot. However, that is not necessary for reading. It's not necessary to be a reader for you to be going out and buying books and doing hauls and doing unhauls to try to get rid of books. You don't need to be doing that. You don't need to be going out and buying books. You don't need to be posting that you're going out and buying books. It is enjoyable because you might be able to find people who also enjoy that book or can recommend it for you, but it's not necessary. The next one is, it is okay to DNF a book. And there will be a lot of people, I have gotten comments on posts on Instagram and here on YouTube saying like, oh, I never DNF. It's okay to not DNF, but it is also okay to DNF. Because I know for me personally, and I know for a lot of other people, if they're reading a book, if I'm reading a book that is not enjoyable, then that can lead to a reading slump, a reading funk, or rut, whatever you call it. So it is okay to DNF books. You don't have to, but you also don't have to force yourself to finish a book just for the sake of finishing it and just for the sake of saying that you read it or adding it to your yearly renewal. The next reminder is, it is okay to stick to 1 to 2 genres. I always recommend to try to expand your reading tastes and to read outside of your comfort zone, and this is a recommendation that, as I said, I try to give and that a lot of people try to give, but you do not have to be constantly reading outside of your comfort zone. You can stick to your 1 to 2 main genres or 3 main genres. You do not have to be always reading outside those genres. And the last one is that reading slumps, reading funks, reading ruts, like I've talked about a little bit before, they happen. Like, there's no real way to avoid them. There are ways you can sort of avoid them if you know what kind of triggers it, so to say, for you personally. I know for me, sometimes if I add too many books to my currently reading pile at once, especially if it's multiple books in the same format, like multiple physical books or multiple ebooks or multiple audiobooks, if I'm adding like 3+ books to my currently reading pile that I'm reading at the same time, that leads into a reading slump for me. Or if I'm forcing myself to finish a book rather than DNFing it, that leads to a reading slump for me. So there's no real way to avoid them. You can kind of there's no real way to avoid them. You can identify your own personal little things, habits that lead into reading slumps, and you can try to like do that less, do those things less. Like with me, I can keep my currently reading pile at most 3 books or less. And when I'm reading more than 1 book at once, I can do different formats. I can have like 1 book as an audiobook and 1 as a physical and 1 as an ebook. And also doing multiple genres, like the audiobook could be literary fiction, the physical book could be historical fiction, and the ebook could be nonfiction. So there are ways that I know that I can try to avoid it or make the reading slump less harsh, but there's no real way to avoid it. So they happen, and as I said earlier in the video, I have linked a video down below in the description on what to do during one when you're experiencing one. So if you need that advice, go click that link down below in the description. That is the end of this video. If you have any other reminders for readers, new or recurring readers, please leave them down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.